So there's a really cool old Lewis Carroll story, and it's all about the paradox of trying to make a more and more detailed map. And one character says to the other, what's the most detailed map you can possibly imagine? And he says, oh, about 6 inches to the mile. She says, 6 inches? We tried 6 yards to the mile. Then we tried 100 yards to the mile, and soon enough, we actually made a map of the country on a scale of the mile to the mile. Have you used it much, says the character? Well, it's never been spread out yet. You see, the farmers objected. They said it would cover the whole country and block out all the light. So, well, now we use the country itself as a map, and I assure you it does just as well. So, the joke is obviously that in cartography, eventually the strive for greater and greater accuracy is eventually futile and even a contradiction. But what I want to talk about today is that in mapping, now we're actually entering a whole new era where we're moving from abstractions to one-to-one maps of the planet, and we're actually building maps more in virtual reality than we are in a traditional way. So I grew up in London, and my background is as an engineer. And then a few years ago, I decided I needed a change of scenery, and I moved to a place called Chamonix in the French Alps. And for those of you who don't know it, it's a town underneath Mont Blanc. It's kind of the capital of alpinism, extreme skiing, and mountaineering. And like probably many others before me, I was drawn there for a passion for the outdoors and the mountains. But when I got there, there was this kind of real contrast. I realized that in the city, for a long time, map platforms, particularly digital map platforms, have kind of been the foundation of almost every interaction we go about every day. So whether that's kind of plotting a route from A to B, whether that's seeing whether the traffic is bad and I should get a taxi or a bus, how far away the bus is, whether my favourite restaurant's open, or even before I even leave the house, see what somewhere is like. So we've gone from like static maps to these dynamic, contextual, real-time platforms. We kind of take them for granted. Except back in the mountains, I was using these old topographic maps, like piecing together manually different sources of information and translating them onto the map to try and make the decisions I needed before I left the house or when I was out in the mountains. And what struck me is that these abstractions are hard to understand, so most people wouldn't recognize, here this is a map of probably the most famous peak on Earth, this is a Matterhorn, the most recognizable. And I started thinking, well, if we can't even recognize the most famous of summits in these abstractions, there must be a whole load of other stuff we're missing. Because maps ultimately at their core are just answers to questions. And like the very first maps were made before the era of photography, aeroplanes, satellites, and the internet. And so the art of cartography, amazing as it was to basically take a single abstraction of a place and try and make one map that could answer any number of questions you might have about a place. Except today, that's not what maps are about. Like we can actually build maps that are the perfect answer to any individual question we have at that moment in time. So this is all being driven by a major kind of wave of technology. And if you look at the number of satellites, Earth observation satellites that were launched between 2005 and 2014, so in those 10 years we launched about 170 new Earth observation satellites into orbit. In the 10 years that followed, we're forecasting over 1,700 new Earth observation satellites to be launched into orbit. It's almost a tenfold increase in the things orbiting the planet. What that means is, between 2010 and 2019, we're going to be producing 40 times more data every day about the planet. And that's just imagery, and we haven't even started to talk. The same is happening in weather, radar, real-time video even. And this means that rather than just taking images of the Earth from points in time to study, we're actually starting to get images of the Earth on a daily basis. So that rather than do things manually, for instance, keeping records about ships going out in a port, you can actually now every day see how many ships come in and out of Botany Bay and the containers. You can see how and where illegal mining is happening in Peru and how it's affecting the rivers. And we can check how deforestation is progressing on a daily or weekly basis in our rainforests. But the other thing that's happening is it's way, way more than just pictures. So now we're actually able to take these images we have, and by taking multiple images of a single location, we can use something called stereophotogrammetry to create a 3D model from this. And because the images we have today are starting to be such high resolution, rather than the general scale, we're starting to be able to build 3D models down to the meter or even centimeter scale. And in the cities, we're going even further using things like LiDAR to create, using lasers to create three-dimensional models down to even the millimeter precision. But the real thing that's bringing it to life is advances in other aspects of technology. So gaming engines now have become so advanced that we can take this very high density data and actually process it and manipulate it and use it in real time, even obviously with us in the palm of our hands offline on our devices. So, back in Chamonix, me and a friend started wondering what would happen if we took all of this stuff and we put it for use instead of the streets and cities, and we tried to build the ultimate map for adventure. And there's been lots of 3D maps made before, but generally these have been aimed at a global scale for general overviews. We wanted to say, how would we build a map in a very local context for kind of human scale decision making for places like this, where the difference between a meter or another makes a critical difference to your decision making. And so we started talking to local mountain guides, professional athletes, and gathering data about the challenges they had and what would really make the ultimate map. And the beginning was to create an ultra-high resolution 3D map of the Chamonix Valley. So we used stereoscopic satellite imagery to create a model down to 2 meter resolution. This is about 15 times higher resolution than any other map that's been made of the area. We put it in a gaming engine, take it offline, and be able to get out into the mountains to use it to take decisions. But the key thing was not just having a 3D model. The key thing was to be able to start making that computational and build calculations to answer like any particular question we had about the outdoors. So for example, in a ski context, one of the most important things to know is gradient. And in order to do that on a topographic map, you have to measure the contours between the lines on the map. It's pretty slow to do, it's pretty error prone. And in steep skiing, the difference between steep and death-defying is only about 5 or 10 degrees. And so what we did was build a heat map of gradient based on the data we had, so that we could see very clearly the lines that were skiable or not skiable. And then we started to say, okay, what other tools can we build? So we did the same computations using the model for orientation, calculating flat zones to say where could we place a tent, or where could we land a helicopter in the event of an emergency. Take information the local mountain guides knew about the glaciers, so where were the safe passages, where were the dangerous areas, and transpose that onto the map. And then also try to address like one of the most complex aspects of decision making in the mountains, which is avalanche risk, where you're taking external information about the risk, condition information, translating that based on elevation, gradient, aspect, and more, and then translating that manually to the map to make decisions in the terrain. And this is super error prone, so we took a statistical model by a Swiss mountain guide called Werner Munter and literally transposed it onto the map so that you can see at a glance exactly when you're in a safe place, when you're entering a dangerous area, and start to make decisions without the risk of having made a translation error to the map. So then we started thinking, well, if we're really going to put this to the test, we have to take it somewhere where there's no other map, but this is the only thing we can rely on. And we heard about, from some friends, a place called Kulasuk in southeast Greenland, with incredible mountains, very little ski exploration. And the thing that really interested us about it was that the last map of the area was made in 1954, at a scale of about 1 to 250,000. So in kind of ski or exploration terms, it's a bit like trying to climb Mount Everest with a road atlas. And so it took us, using what we learned in Chamonix, it took us about a week. We made this 3D map using elevation data and satellite imagery from Digital Globe. But then, because in like these places, the information, the reference data you need is super local. It's tied to local people. We built a tool that meant that when we got there, we could take what the local Greenlandic hunters and Inuits knew, and we translate that to the maps. They told us about the no-go areas, the safe passages across the sea ice, the recent polar bear sightings, the hunters' cabins, and put all of that into the map when we were there. And then off we went. We spent about 2 weeks out across the sea ice into the main glaciated area, through all sorts of kinds of weather, and I guess I'd be lying if I said it was completely plain sailing. There were loads of things we learned, like more data we should have collected, or different tools we should have built. But ultimately, we were still able to use this map to start exploring the area, picking new lines, navigating, and over the week our kind of confidence grew, finding kind of these sheltered spots to camp, and after a couple of weeks there was this kind of moment where we were on top of this ridge, and this has kind of been the main objective that we spotted from the beginning of the trip, and we're looking down on this huge 1,000-meter long face, and we kind of planned to go this way, but when we got there, you kind of couldn't quite see across the face the way we planned to go. And in skiing, obviously, it's pretty easy to go down. Gravity helps you with that. It's pretty hard to reverse your steps. And in Greenland, particularly there was no chance of rescue. There was no way we could have anyone to help us if we were wrong. And so suddenly, you start to ask yourself these questions. And so, on one hand, we knew, we know the map's right, we've been using it for the last couple of weeks. And on the other hand, it was a kind of super intricate passage through this band of cliffs that would allow us to reach the way out down this face. And I suppose, at that point, I kind of realized it doesn't matter whether you're, forging new terrain in the mountains or it's a new venture in any part of business or wild. If you don't have courage and conviction about what you're doing, then you really don't have anything at all. So there was only really one thing we could do, and that was get on with it. And of course, it all panned out. This is Stuart through the cliff band into this incredible bowl of skiing that went all the way down to the sea. It's a new, one of quite a few new lines we skied in the area over those couple of weeks. And the thing that we realised is having a computational map and having this in our tool completely game changing. One, because we could do totally new things that we couldn't do before, but also because we had a much greater margin of safety to do it with. And so now, plans to take what we've learned and try and build a map of the entire planet in the same way. And so we've actually just opened our office here in Berlin, because Berlin is basically the mapping capital in many senses. We're cutting edge of what's happening in the space. But really the reason we want to do it and the reason we think it's important is because we think that in this world we live in, we're more and more spending time only in urban environments, and more people want to escape that and get out, but there's less and less ways in order to do that, and it's quite hard to get the information you need. Even 100 years ago, John Muir said that over-civilized people are beginning to realize that going to the mountains is going home. And I think today that's even truer than it was then. And I guess not just talking about kind of crazy trips to Greenland. For us, this is just about building a map that allows people to go even for a hike in their local national park or a ride in the Scottish Hills. Because I think by having better maps of our natural landscape, that will also extend to wildlife conservation, helping with deforestation, industrial uses. Ultimately, that for us is the key to preserving these incredible places. Ultimately we hope that all we can do is help inspire people to put down their computers, turn off their phones, and go and have an adventure in nature. Thanks.
there we are. Well done. Thank you for that. That's amazing. Wow. Was it scary? Really?
Everything's relative.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
It's
scary, but
committing, but
yeah. Okay, so that's really like putting your ideas on the line. Cool. Alright, well thank you for that. That was an amazing talk. We don't have any time for questions, but you'll be around for the rest of the day. Yeah, and possibly you might sign up for an AMA or something like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Big round of applause.